Back in 2019, a 14-year-old boy in the UK took a trip to the doctor's office and complained about feeling tired. On the surface, he looked pretty normal, as in, he was not overweight and he had no prior history of medical conditions that required any medications. The only odd thing about him, and that's a very emphasized only, was the fact that his diet was extremely limited. Due to his restrictive food choices, the child mainly consumed French fries, potato chips, white bread, and processed meat. Blood tests were conducted on him and unsurprisingly detected low levels of essential vitamins, largely vitamin B12, which consequently also caused low levels of anemia. Vitamin B12 is what helps in creating red blood cells, while also assisting in forming DNA, maintaining a healthy nervous system, and cellular metabolism. So basically, it's a super important vitamin to have because it directly impacts all of these major bodily functions. To address his low B12 levels, the health professionals provided him direct B12 injections and discussed ways to adjust his diet so that he can encompass all of the essential vitamins and minerals in a variety of food groups. Unfortunately, this advice fell on deaf ears, and a year later, he started to experience vision weakness and hearing loss, and at the ripe age of 17, became what is considered legally blind in both the United States and the UK. His vision became a staggering 20 out of 200. His extremely limited diet is what ultimately caused a condition called optic neuropathy, according to researchers from the University of Bristol in England. Optic neuropathy is damage to the optic nerve, which occurs when the blood flow is restricted or changes. Their research on junk food is an interesting and important one, and we're going to delve into specifics shortly. We all know that junk food is bad, but rarely do we talk about the horrendous outcomes that can occur from just eating junk food with no nutritional value for long periods of time. Essentially, it can damage the body to the point of permanent disfigurement. The professionals were able to see that there was an issue with his optic nerve, but the cause wasn't initially very clear until they actually jotted down his eating habits. The child stated that he was a picky eater and would not consume certain textures of food, and literally only ate fries, chips, white bread, and processed meat. This case of blindness caused by nutritional deficiencies is rare in developed countries. However, because he was deficient in some pretty important vitamins, the blindness and deafness is not super surprising. Although optic nerve damage can be improved and possibly even reversed, such repairment requires early detection as well as an early treatment. In the case of the teenage boy, the supplementation he was provided did halt further vision impairment, but unfortunately his vision did not improve. But if there was no treatment conducted, at all, the only other option is just permanent blindness. The research on the impact of nutritional deficiencies also highlights something else important. BMI and calorie intake should not be used to assess the health of an individual. The study was not highly received by everyone, though. Critics pointed out that the study only focuses on one case, and even then, not all the specifics have been released or presented for that one case. Specifically speaking, people wanted to know more details on how the teenager actually ended up being blind permanently, because optic neuropathy in and of itself is both rare and typically temporary. But in my opinion, just coming from someone looking at this case holistically, it sort of makes sense that there was permanent damage. I mean, the child attested that he's been eating like this for years. And the fact that he was a child eating like this in a time where he should have been eating a diet that checks all the nutritional boxes is alarming. He was restricting himself in the years where he was also growing, and 7 years exactly. So I'm not surprised that the damage done is not reversible. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious what you guys think about that critique. Like, I understand it's one case, but to me, it just makes sense that that was the outcome. It is more common to see these consequences in people of older age, though, specifically people over 60. Diets low in nutritional value for older individuals is directly linked to macular degeneration, which also directly impacts other bodily functions. A study conducted back in 2014 delved into age-related macular degeneration on American diets, and the data supported this association. What they discovered was that the group of people who ate a diet full of vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, and lean meats were less at risk for health problems. And conversely, those who ate refined carbs, processed meat, fries, and foods high in fat were more likely to suffer from health issues. Refined carbohydrates in the form of white bread, chips, and sweets can literally attack the cells in the body by damaging their proteins, which essentially causes them to not function properly. This all sounds like common knowledge, but mortality statistics and data ironically showcase that this knowledge is sadly not that common. To date, the leading cause of death in the United States is heart disease. To circle back, the teenager was not only supplemented with the nutrients he was missing, he was also sent to a mental health facility because, in addition to suffering from nutritional deficiencies, it was also believed that he had an eating disorder, specifically avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. The eating disorder was intense and was overboard picky. According to a doctor, the boy had blind spots located in the center of his vision, but he still had his peripheral vision. What that meant for him was that he was able to walk, but he could not drive, read, watch TV, or see faces that clearly. Picky eating, especially in younger children who are still growing, should be promptly addressed. And that was the story of the teenage boy who turned blind after eating fries for 7 years. It's a very depressing case because this happened in a developed country where nutritional foods are readily available. Typically, these types of cases occur in third world and underdeveloped countries, so this easily could have been prevented had his parents or guardians or whoever was looking after him could have just been more mindful or educated on what the child was consuming. Or rather, not consuming. Yeah, he was an extremely picky eater, but it should be common sense that eating junk food or food with no nutritional value obviously is going to have negative impacts. But we're also learning today that sense is not so common, unfortunately. In the articles I read, there was also no indication or mention of any extreme financial hardships, so I can only assume that that was not an obstacle either. This was just a case of a child who had a bad habit of restrictive and selective eating, and no one addressed his poor diet until his body basically started to internally degrade to the point of irreversible damage. And that's what's the most infuriating part about this case, honestly, the ignorance. But I'll leave it at that. And that is why it is important to be educated on health and diets in general, and consume a diet that consists of a variety of nutrients. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting content.